I thank the gentleman for yielding time to me this morning. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the rule and the underlying bill, and I urge my colleagues to defeat the previous question so that the House can vote on my bipartisan legislation, the Presidential Tax Transparency Act. Mr. Speaker, in the last week, the President fired the FBI who was investigating him. We then learned that the President also pressured the director to end his investigation of Michael Flynn's Russia entanglements. These revelations, added to so many others, make it abundantly clear that we must have disclosure of the President's tax returns in order to fully understand his connections to Russia. The Presidential Tax Transparency Act would require this disclosure for the current President, all future presidents, and presidential nominees. Now, this practice has never been required by law, but if there were ever a time for Congress to codify this bipartisan disclosure tradition, now is the time. The President's behavior has raised questions since before the election about what connections or exposure he may have to Russian officials. After the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA concluded that Russia did, in fact, interfere in our national elections, after several of the President's associates and staff lied about meetings with Russian officials during the campaign and transition, and after the FBI opened an investigation into these Russia contacts, the President still welcomed top Russian diplomats into the Oval Office for a closed-door meeting last week. Holding the meeting itself raised many questions, but in the meeting, the President revealed highly classified code word information to the Russians. I believe that this is unprecedented, that no president in the history of our country has ever done such a thing. And on May 16th, the New York Times reported that the President pressed the former FBI, Jim Comey, to end his investigation of Michael Flynn's ties to Russia before he fired him. This all begs the question, why is the President so eager to please the Russians? The appointment of former FBI Director Mueller, a distinguished, highly distinguished public servant, as special counsel is most welcome. But I believe that Congress can act today to provide public disclosure of the President's tax returns, which would provide an immediate and important window into the President's potential Russian entanglements, and answer the critical questions of to whom does he owe money and who does the President doing business with? What are those entities? We know there are 564 of them. The American people deserve to know. Now, only with full disclosure will we know the true sources of the President's income, the holders of his debt, and the extent of any business ties to Russia and other foreign countries. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a highly serious bipartisan, I want to stress that, bipartisan effort to exercise Congress's constitutional duty to serve as a check and balance on the executive branch as a co-equal branch of government. As the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, said on May 14th, quote, "Our institutions are under attack, both externally and internally." I want to thank all the co-sponsors of this bill, and most especially the Republicans who have had the courage to do so. It takes courage to have courage. Now is the time to stand up and demonstrate courage so that the American people will have confidence in what takes place here and to answer the questions that are left unanswered. So by defeating the previous question today and voting to approve the Presidential Tax Transparency Act, Congress can create a pathway to the facts and then the truth that the American people have a right to know. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.